Welcome, everyone. We have a really exciting topic here for you today, something that we've been using at Pace now, a Microsoft Copilot, for the last couple of months, because there is such a wide range of interest in the legal space, along with our own business. So I'll just do some quick introductions. Neil, if you're controlling the slides, maybe you can, yeah, there we go. So yes, I'm Tyler Sanders, CEO at Pace Technical, joined by Neil Murray, VCIO at Pace Technical, and one of our close Microsoft partners from PAX 8, Tanya Fortin. Tanya will be running a lot of the content today and giving us the demo to take us through some real world examples on Microsoft Copilot. Quickly about Pace, for those of you who don't know us, we are an IT managed service provider focused on the legal industry. We've been working with legal for many years and actively work with about 60 law firms, largely throughout the GTA. We've been in business for 23 years. We provide proactive managed IT security solutions, managed cloud. We're an ISO 9001 2015 certified business, 9 years, great place to work, and have about 60 full-time employees. So if you haven't spoken to us recently, we'd love the opportunity to have a conversation either about Microsoft Copilot, cybersecurity, Microsoft Azure, or anything else that we can help your firm with from a technology perspective.
Okay. All right, thank you, Tyler. And from there, I'd like to bring in Tanya to start with her discussion about Copilot. And I'll be just introducing some of the topics we'll be going to and just really posing some questions to Tanya that will lead into to each slide. So Tanya, to begin, I know a lot of the attendees here today have probably heard a lot about AI, specifically ChatGPT has been in the news a lot. They're very popular over the last year or so. So one of the first questions I'd like to look at is, how does Copilot differentiate from your ChatGPT type platform, including what are some of the security concerns that Copilot addresses?
Absolutely. Good question, Neil. Basically, ChatGPT, the free version, everyone has jumped on this when this was launched not too long ago and practically broke the internet. We've seen how we can actually generate a lot of content through ChatGPT, and a lot of people have started to adopt this within their work environment. And that is one thing that, since Copilot has been launched from Microsoft, I've been trying to get businesses to forbid ChatGPT free version in their environment and try to push their users to use Copilot. Copilot, which is included with most of the Microsoft bundles that users are actually on right now, offers commercial data protection. Contrary to the free ChatGPT that users are leveraging, Copilot is not used to teach the AI model. So everything you put in there is really confidential. No eyes on what you do, no chats were saved, no results are actually saved. So it is an AI, very powerful tool, leveraging ChatGPT, actually GPT-4 and DALL-E 3 for images and content. And like I said, there's no additional cost to most users because it's included with most of Microsoft bundles. What I also like about Copilot is that it's very transparent. So any results that you will get, Copilot will cite the sources it actually used to create that reply that it gives you.
Perfect. I think that helps with sometimes there's questions about whether some of the content is made up versus based on reality. So having those citations definitely is helpful to prove where that came from.
Absolutely.
Okay, now I understand there's also more than one version of Copilot. There is actually some that's available for free. You've mentioned here about it being included with Entra. Can you talk the difference between the free and the licensed?
Absolutely. So Microsoft has different offerings on Copilot. Copilot is becoming a series of different applications. What we've discussed earlier is the free web version that allows you to leverage the web, but the Copilot for Microsoft 365, as you can see on the slide here, is the large language model, but leveraging your data within the applications that you use on a daily basis and the internet, like the Copilot we discussed earlier and ChatGPT as well.
Right. Okay, so when you're using Microsoft Copilot, obviously then it has access to, as you said, all your Microsoft 365 platforms, any data you have in SharePoint, Teams, your email. What strategies are there to protect this? How do you approach the protection, what access it has?
Very good point, Neil. So this is AI, very new to everyone. So we need to approach this in a different way. Microsoft has built tools to actually protect you, to actually look after security, after compliance and privacy. So you can approach artificial intelligence responsibly within your teams. So whatever you do on a day-to-day basis is important to prepare and make sure everything is in place for your users to leverage AI in a secure and compliant way. So especially in your area of work, in legal firms, it does become even more important than a retail store, for example.
Right. Absolutely. So the focus on security obviously is one of their guiding principles when it comes to designing Copilot. I think that there's some other designing principles that they use to guide that development. Can we explore that a bit too?
Of course. So when Microsoft started to work on AI tools and develop these AI tools back in 2017, 2018, they noticed that laws and regulations were not there yet. So they thought very important to start building an ethical framework for their developers to really follow these principles in order to make sure things were done right in terms of artificial intelligence. So 6 principles were established. So fairness, reliability and safety, privacy and security, and inclusiveness, which I'll also sit on 2 main ones, which is transparency and accountability. So in terms of fairness, we wanted to make sure that AI systems should treat everyone fairly and not be different for different groups of peoples in different ways if they're in similar situations. Reliability and safety, Microsoft wanted to make sure that those systems were operated safely and consistently under normal or unexpected conditions. So whatever the conditions were, it had to be consistent. And inclusiveness, I know that's a conversation we've had, Neil, but with so many people being affected with disabilities around the world, AI technology can become game changer. So we wanted to make sure that inclusive design practices could help system developers understand and address potential barriers in a product environment that could unintentionally exclude people. And then in terms of transparency, we want to make sure to, like we mentioned with the Copilot for the web earlier, that citations are there, that we know where those answers are coming from, has to be transparent and accountable. So anyone that works on those AI systems should be accountable for how they develop and how systems are operated.
Okay, thank you. Now, so a lot of the firms that are here with us today, obviously, if they have, after this, they're kind of interested, what would it take to go down that road of a Copilot implementation? How would you recommend approaching that?
There are multiple questions that they will need to ask themselves. And Neil, that is also conversations we've had with your team. No matter the AI tool that is implemented, I feel like the first question before rolling this out to all users in a firm would be, what is the organization's, what is the firm's goal in using AI? I've met with multiple customers since January. And when I ask this question, what is your goal? You want this product, but what is your goal? Most of those people have answered, I don't know. So if you don't know why you're getting into this, how can you measure your return on investment? How can you make sure this is used responsibly? How can you make sure this is done right for your firm, but also your clients and everyone it affects? So the first thing to ask or to focus on is your goal. But maybe you don't know what the goal is because this is so new to everyone. So another question you can ask is what is the firm's pain points that AI can address? Do you have heavy processes, admin, repetitive tasks that are done? Do you have a lot of document layouts that you need to address? So those are all examples that you'll see. And then important to verify what is your firm's current capabilities in terms of AI. And if we're talking Microsoft, what bundles do you have? Your users, are they comfortable with AI? How can you address this? Have you addressed their worries around AI? Is your security high enough? You probably already have cybersecurity implemented within your firm's systems, but is it enough? If we're talking about AI, it's a different game. We need to increase that cybersecurity. And in terms of data, I know a law firm does handle a whole lot of data. Is that data structured well? Is it cleaned up? Do you have data governance strategy in place? Because once you go around all of your data, identify it, label it, what is very sensitive, what is not sensitive, which users should have access to what data, should we have conditional access here? So there's a lot of cybersecurity elements related to the data because your AI results are as powerful and accurate as the quality of your data. So that is very important. And does your firm have the necessary infrastructure and resources to support AI initiatives? That will be conversation that you'll need to have with your IT team, if it is PACE, if it's an internal IT, but very important to review all of this before you start rolling this out to a whole team.
Right.
And Tanya, yeah, those are all great points. And I think so many of us think along the line cybersecurity, we're looking externally more so than internally. And how do we keep the threat actors, the bad people out of the environments and protect that? But with AI, it's a shift. We need to still focus on that, but so much of it is also that internal ethical walls, let's call it, the internal security to manage and govern the data, because if that data is accessible, AI can find it and can query it. And you want to make sure that when people are querying using Copilot or some form of AI on internal data, that they're only accessing stuff they should have access to.
Absolutely. Very good point, Tyler. If we actually go to the next slide, that brings on the next point.
Exactly. And this is talking about, what we just covered here is how, as a business, you're stepping back and looking at what do you need to prepare. This next bit exactly is how are we preparing your users for it, and how are you preparing that data so that it's secure, that people aren't finding the wrong data.
Absolutely. So let me skip the first one just because we've touched upon the security posture in the Microsoft cloud. So one thing to understand, Copilot for Microsoft 365 will leverage the data that is on the Microsoft cloud. So we talked about the increasing the cybersecurity, the outside threats, yes, but what about inside? So all users should not have access to all the information. And even if it's not intentional, how many users have access to their emails on their phones right now, on mobile devices? So that conditional access portion and identifying different groups of users with different security levels will be of the utmost importance before you start anything. Because even though it's not intentional, those users do have access to very sensitive data, Do we want data loss prevention policies there to avoid leakage of that data? Because Microsoft 365 Copilot is like a personal assistant. Whatever keys I have to my data, that AI assistant will have the same keys. So keep that in mind. The other thing we need to actually get ready in terms of checklists is get our employees, our users ready with AI-powered tools. One great thing is to get used to prompting. I'm the first to say I'm guilty of thinking like this is still a Google search. Go in your browser, look at Google, type in a few words, get a bunch of results, and then analyze the results on my own. That AI-powered tool structure is different. We need to shift our way of thinking about this and understand that there is an interaction. I can ask a question, give it as much details as possible. So prompting, it is a skill, and we need to start practicing it to make that shift happen in our brains. So we can already get our users to use Copilot, formerly called Bing Chat Enterprise, but that free Copilot on the web will actually help us get used to prompting. The last point on this slide is the sensitive business data. As a legal firm, you have to handle sensitive data day in, day out. So cleaning up that data, making sure the structure is accurate. I know that there's a lot of data outside of Microsoft Cloud, and that's okay, but everything that is on your OneDrive, on your SharePoint, in your mailboxes, on Teams, very important to label what is very sensitive to protect this from accidental leakage, not just in intentional outside threats, but internal as well. And data governance. That will also be very important. And you can rely on your IT teams for assistance and for help in structuring that data and establishing your governance strategies.
And I think a lot of the attendees here are probably used to dealing with ethical walls and how to separate some of that data out. But now it's not just about the different the cases you're working on, but also, for example, you don't want someone just to pull a report on all the expenses from the partners, for example, right? That's where it's very important to have all that separation, know who's where. Okay. So now can we, a lot of what we've talked about here applies to business in general that can use Copilot. Obviously, speaking with Taloma today, there's a lot of interest in how can a law firm in particular use Copilot. Maybe we can dive into some examples of where a law firm can use Copilot.
Absolutely. And with the demo that I'll be going through a little later, I think one thing you can focus your mind is to try to see if those things are operations that you do day in, day out. But with Microsoft 365 Copilot, you can actually expect assistance in automating complex tasks. Like I said earlier, like analyzing Excel spreadsheets. So you've got an Excel spreadsheet with a lot of dollars or a lot of data. How can you get insights from this? So a person would have to go in, create a graph or a pivot table and try to come up with insights on the data. But Microsoft 365 Copilot would actually automate that for you. And if it's not deep enough, you can challenge that AI assistant to get you more. Another thing that you can think of is how can you prioritize important communications and schedule your response? Let's say you've been in a meeting with a client preparing for an hour or two. How many emails did you miss? Or you've been on vacation for a week and you come back and your mailbox is just exploding with new emails. How can you ask Copilot to target the important emails that need to be responded to right away, or summarize long email threads so you don't have to read through that whole thread? So that can also help. That would be that second bullet point, Neil. And to the third point, one thing that I want you to keep in mind, this is not magic. It is an AI tool, and consider it as an assistant. If you hire a personal assistant or a legal assistant, that person doesn't know everyone in your firm, doesn't know how you classify your documents or where those file cabinets are, which how you organize everything, doesn't know everyone, every room. So whenever you ask that person to help you with something, you will need to give them a lot of details. It will slow you down. Every time you hire a new person, it does slow you down, but you actually gain efficiency as this person gets trained and gets used to how you do things. So the same thing. The third way I would see Microsoft 365 Copilot being efficient for a law firm would be in drafting legal documents or suggesting content improvement or formatting options. But again, if you have a legal assistant, you will not trust everything they do. You will still have to review it and proofread or approve those documents. Visualize this as being the same thing, or making sure that things are done, or just starting from a draft. Remember the draft portion. It will never give you that final perfect document you're looking for, but it will get you started. Always easier to start from something than to start from scratch. So this is where you will gain a lot of efficiency, I think.
Right. And I think actually we were talking too a bit after this, some of the other areas, I think for lawyers in particular, some of the documents that are coming in for some of the cases you're working on could be hundreds of pages in size. So you can ask Copilot, ask it to go in and do a summarization. You know, what kind of review document can it create? And that can just help you get your toe in the water with that document to understand what's in there with a good summarization. Sometimes you may have to work in doing, redacting certain information that can't go back out to the courts. So assisting with looking for certain information when you're doing redactions and such like that. It's a great assistant for those kind of things.
Absolutely.
So up till now, we've done a lot of talking. I truly feel at times seeing is believing. I think at this point, it'd be great to open up to do a demo. So what I'll do here is I'll just remove my screen here. And I think, Tanya, you want to do your screen? We can go into a quick demo here.
Yeah. Let me share the appropriate screen now. Let me know if you actually see my browser.
Yep, we've got that.
Perfect. Now, just to manage expectations, I want to make sure that you understand this is a click-through demo because of security. I cannot share my my data. And that click-through demo was made more towards the business industry than for a law firm. But just open your mind and see how you could actually transpose this into your daily tasks. So we talked about Copilot, what comes free with most Microsoft bundles. So if I just use Edge, and I know a lot of people do not like Edge. I loved Chrome, but I actually got used to Edge. You would have this little icon at the top here. Clicking on it would open up that Copilot for the web, which is the equivalent of the free ChatGPT, but with commercial data protection, as I mentioned before. Now, I want to chat right here with Copilot. I want a precise answer, and I am going to prompt it. As you can see, I'm asking Copilot to summarize the top 5 features customers are looking for in an electric bike in 2023. So I've given a lot of details here in my prompt, not just electrical bike features. So I want to know what was researched on Google in 2023. So I get my reply here and I get the citations. Where was that information taken from? So right now I will ask Copilot to compose I want to create a summary for a group of company executives of the top 5 features customers looked for in an electrical bike. I want this to be professional in the format of an email. So of course, we're not doing this in Outlook because I don't have Microsoft 365 Copilot. It is just the web version that comes with most bundles that you have on Microsoft. Company executives, I want to make this short because they don't have time to read long emails, and I will ask to generate my draft. I already have my draft. I can copy this right here and actually paste it in a new email in Outlook. What if I don't use Edge? What I can do is I can simply, in Chrome or Firefox or any browser like Safari, go to copilot.microsoft.com. There, it will ask me to sign into my Microsoft account, which is the usual Microsoft account you use. And it is a demo. So right here, there's no multi-factor authentication. I do not like this. Everyone should have forced MFA on their account. So I will enter my password and sign in. And this is where I actually get. And as you can see, it does say protected up here. So commercial data protection, no eyes on, no saving of the searches of the results. Now I do have a document. I cannot reference the document because I don't have Microsoft 365 Copilot, but I can go and I can copy that information, go back to my Copilot browser, and then I can say to Copilot, use this information to write a short value proposition on the Thunderbolt e-bike, and I will paste the information I've copied from my document and try to see what it creates me. So right now, I do have my value proposition on the Thunderbolt e-bike. And as you can see, it didn't just leverage the information I gave it, that I pasted there. I've got all those references. So it is citing all the websites it got information from. Right now, what I want is I want Copilot to compare these specs to the top 3 e-bikes on the market in 2023 with a tabular summary using short description and citations. So as you can see, this is not just a Google search. I'm really giving it as much information as possible, as though I was giving this to a human being that I would have hired to be my assistant. And there you go. I do have that little Excel icon right here where I could copy that information and bring it to an Excel spreadsheet. Now that I have this, I want to bring this a little further. And I said that Copilot was built on GPT-4 and DALL-E. So let's ask Copilot to draw a logo for Northwind's Thunderbolt electric bike. Now, those are not stock images. Those will be brand new images that will not be created for anyone else. This is commercial data protection. I've got 4 options of logos right here. Now let's go to a PDF that I have on the Thunderbolt, which is my product. I'm in Edge, so I will click on that little icon. I will ask Copilot to chat. And what I want as a reference, I want Copilot to use that PDF and create half a dozen short social media posts based on the webpage that is included, including emojis. So here we go. We do have 6 social media posts that I can use, including emojis for each. So content creation becomes even easier. Once I'm done, I can simply sign out of my account and everything is still secured. Sign out right here. And that is the free Copilot. So there is a lot you can do. in the free Copilot included with most Microsoft bundles. And I would recommend to start using it now. If any of you are using the free ChatGPT, leave it aside. I've heard a lot of people say, I'm not doing any harm. I'm just asking it to help me create content. But the content you're creating through the free ChatGPT, you might be losing a little bit of competitive edge. Some information might be harmful to your firm and you don't know about it because we can't consider all aspects. This is so new. Let's not take any chances on this and switch to Microsoft Copilot. Now, was there any questions? Perfect. So I'll move on
We have
to
just one question about whether it's going to be recorded, and I believe it will be, and we'll be sharing that, or Tuluma will be sharing that out with participants.
yes. So that webinar is recorded, but the search that you do in Copilot, they're not. Now, let's see what Microsoft 365 does. As we mentioned earlier, it is the large language model. It is your data within your regular Microsoft applications. So in Teams, I was invited to a meeting. I am late coming to that meeting, so I don't want to slow anyone down. I will ask Copilot to recap this meeting so far so I can catch up quickly and jump into that meeting. So I've prompted Microsoft 365 Copilot. I actually get a summary of that meeting. We've spoke about renewable energy lead time, recyclable and biopackaging lead time, inventory, and demand. Now, I want to know how the group feels about the inventory status. Google can't do that, but Copilot can do a bit of sentiment analysis. So asking how the group feels about this, and again, you will notice that there are little numbered bubbles at the end of everything, so you can actually click on it and go in the transcription of that meeting to see that citation and to really confirm that Microsoft 365 Copilot is not totally wrong or is totally wrong. Remember, it's an assistant. You also need to train, so it will get better as you keep using it. Now, I heard that the group had mixed feelings about the inventory status. What I've asked is what questions are still unresolved. The biopackaging material are new and untested, and the renewable energy products have the longest lead time. So those questions were still unresolved. So that is some examples of what you can do within Teams. What I love to use on a personal note, since I'm a lot on meetings day in, day out, I use the meeting summary. So after a meeting, I will ask, can you please summarize this meeting? Give me a list of action items. So I don't need to appoint any human being taking notes. Copilot does that for me now, and we are sure that it's equal for everyone. Now, if I go to Outlook, during those meetings, I do miss out on long conversation threads, and I have one right here. There were 6 emails exchanged, and I was CC'd on those emails. I'm busy. I don't always have the time to read through everything, so I will ask Copilot to summarize that thread for me. And I do have access to that summary, but I want to make sure is Copilot really accurate on that? So I can click here and it brings me to the email referenced in that summary. Now let's see what it does in Word. So I think in law firms, Word is probably something that is heavily used in creating documents and whatnot. This will be more of a project management demo, but I can actually ask Word to draft is the cue here, a project proposal based on a specific document that I have on SharePoint or OneDrive. So let's reference that document and generate my proposal. So as this is working, and by the way, if you're doing this in real time, this is how much time it really does take the AI tool to create your draft. So reading through it, I feel it makes sense. I will actually keep it, or I could regenerate it. So I keep that draft, but I do want a little more details within project information and the technology that is used. So I paste information that I got from a different document, and I will ask Copilot to actually draft and inspire me on what are the benefits of using those technologies. So asking Copilot to actually inspire me, not giving more information. So it's talking about laser scanning, robotic total station. I feel that seems pretty good, pretty accurate. So I will keep that document. And there you go. My document creation is good. But you can keep on interacting with the AI as much as you want. Now, what if I need to create a presentation from a document? I can actually ask Copilot to transform a file. And now I'm using the prompt suggestions, but I could prompt it myself in here. And this is the file I want Copilot from Microsoft 365 to use to actually build a presentation in PowerPoint. Now, keep in mind, this is a draft. We can always adjust these drafts. I've been using this heavily. What's nice about it, it will create your agenda, the speaker notes, the images, and then you actually start from something. No more blank page syndrome. So we already have a Copilot drafted presentation. Now, how about Excel? I did mention that Excel could give you insight on your data. So I've got a spreadsheet here of sales. I will actually ask Copilot to not show the decimal points in the sales amount because I feel like it's too much noise and the numbers are not clearly seen. So I could do this one by one, but asking it, it took a few seconds and now there's no more decimal points in that column H. Now, what I want to do is I want to highlight every line that shows an amount, a gross sale over 500K. I would have to go line by line as a user, but asking Copilot for Microsoft 365, again, a few seconds and it's done. Now, how about insights on this data right here? I just need to ask Copilot for Microsoft 365 to show me insights. It actually is showing me some nice visible graphs, but I don't want this to be there. I want to be able to share this with people in my team. So I will ask that all insights are added to a new sheet. Now, from one sheet, we will get access to a second sheet with all those nice visual graphic for my data's insight. So this is all things that Microsoft 365 Copilot can do in your environment. And if I go back to Teams, if you have, for example, teams that were created for specific cases or for specific projects, normally you would share documents. Sharing on Teams actually creates a repository in the back end on SharePoint. So what I can do in that Copilot chat, I can ask, what are the upcoming milestones for Project Rela Cloud? It will leverage the documents that are stored for this group chat, and it's giving me the next milestones with the reference. So I can actually go to these documents and see where it got this information from, and then what are the risks, and I can ask Copilot to give me those risks. And again, quickly referencing those files, I do have mitigation, Rela Cloud risk mitigation, and the Rela Cloud project plan document that were referenced to get these legal, bias, and ethical considerations that I need to look into. And then I will ask the AI tool to suggest some mitigations for these risks. And those are suggestions, as I said before. You always have to double check that human interaction is very important. And then I will ask the Copilot for Microsoft 365 to write a message to the team outlining these risks and mitigations. So right there, I will have those files referenced again and my email right here. So those are all examples of what can be done with Microsoft 365 Copilot. If I push it a little more, I can ask it to actually give me a SWOT analysis about the Relic Cloud project. And there it is. It is actually searching information in files and emails. And I do get the strength, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats for my full SWOT analysis with the citations of the documents it actually used to build that information. So that concludes the demo of some use cases with Microsoft 365 Copilot and the Copilot for the web.
It's fantastic. Thank you, Tanya. It's pretty impressive. I mean, every time I see this, it's pretty amazing what you see. I've heard some people describe it as scary too. I mean, but it is, and what it can pull out of some of those discussions, especially the live meetings, is very impressive what that can do.
I have a couple of questions if I can just throw those your way, Tanya. You mentioned the fact that Copilot gets better with use. How is it getting better if the data input is not used to train the model?
So the data input in Copilot for the web is not used to train the large language model that is accessible by everyone on the web. When a group decides to get Copilot from Microsoft 365 in their cloud environment, which we call a tenant at Microsoft, those resources, that AI tool is deployed specifically for that tenant, isolated from all other tenants. So yes, it does learn with your data, with your users, with multiple interactions, but it is contained and confidential within that tenant.
Yep, great. Let's see, there's another question here. Can you use it to schedule your tasks in Outlook?
If you actually give it a list of tasks, it can base itself on your calendar and organize your calendar with that list of tasks.
Okay, one more here. When copying drafts generated by Copilot, do the footnotes sources remain embedded when you paste the copy elsewhere?
Actually, my personal experience, yes, they stay. You need to remove them. But if you paste and you actually copy and paste just the text, those footnotes do disappear.
I actually had one sent to me privately too earlier. I just caught it during your demo. That there's news of ChatGPT 5 coming out. Do you know if there's any plans of integrating that with Copilot, or is there any news on that?
That's a great question. So right now, Copilot is built on GPT-4. So I would assume it will evolve and leverage GPT-5 when that comes available. But keep in mind that it is not ChatGPT. It does leverage that power, but Copilot is actually uses those tools and is infused with commercial data protection. So as the tools evolve, Copilot will evolve as well.
I have another one here. What is Microsoft doing to protect the tenant's data?
So Microsoft has a bunch of tools, cybersecurity, data management tools that are out there. It is the responsibility of each tenant admins to make sure that this is done. Not every organization will have the same needs or the same level of security need as, let's say, a law firm or medical practice. So it will be very important to rely on your IT team or on Pace Technical in this matter to evaluate what is necessary for your group, for your tenant, and identify those users. So the identity, the access categorizing the different sensitivity levels of the data sets that you have. This has to be tailored to every tenant. There is no one size fits all. Everyone has different needs, but Microsoft has all the tools in place. And there's been a lot of education made since that was launched for larger enterprises in November, and now to what we call the Cloud Solution Provider channel, the CSP channel, from January 16. So it is important before you actually embark on that adventure to rely on Pace Technical or your IT team to make sure this is done right.
Very similar to the Microsoft 365 model itself, right? Where it's the tools are there, but it's the companies and the IT's responsibility to leverage those security tools to protect the environment based on the approach that company wants to take with their cyber.
Absolutely, it is. And I've been using multiple analogies for this, but AI is a new tool. You have a forest and you need to actually remove some trees. Well, you can't hire a company and expect they will know which trees they need to cut down. You actually need to identify these trees and tell them what to cut down. Or if you buy that new chainsaw, that new tool, it will work, but you need to learn how to use it. The prompting is also very important.
So just a further question on the same topic. So understanding that the internal risk and the management around that, what about third-party risks? Can you provide more specifics on what Microsoft is doing to prevent, I guess, third-party data leaks from this?
I am not sure I get the whole sense of that question, but I assume it is external attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So anything external, Microsoft does actually provide email protection, does provide endpoint protection tools. That is one thing I mentioned earlier, but every users that actually access company information through email on their cell phone, very important to control that firm's data on those mobile devices. So mobile device management, if anything is done on personal computers, also those computers need to be signed up in a device management tool. So again, this is always the tenant's admin to manage this. So external attacks can happen. MFA is the first thing you need to enable. Email security, information protection, so DLP policies for internal unintentional risks. That is also important. We all are very busy in our day-to-day, so I am guilty of clicking on links I shouldn't have because I was doing too many things at the same time and very focused on the task at hand. That I got an email, seemed legit at the first 1 second look, and I did click on that. So that was unintentional, but that email protection becomes really important. And to protect from the outside, well, everything that is endpoint and email protection is very important. So those tools are there. You need to make sure they are set up appropriately to that organization's need, to that firm's need.
Okay, thank you. Some pricing licensing related questions. So is Copilot part of Microsoft 365? And if not, is there an extra monthly fee?
Very good question. So let's talk about the two options of Copilot we discussed today. The Copilot for the web, which was before called Bing Chat Enterprise. That Copilot will be included with minimal bundles with Microsoft. And I would assume probably everyone in your firm does have access to that. You can actually reach out to your Microsoft provider or Pace Technical in that matter to ask them if they can confirm you do have access to it. So this is no additional cost.
And when you're referring to bundles, it's the Microsoft 365 bundles we're talking about.
Correct. So I'm referencing the business standard, business premium, Office C3, Office C5. So those bundles do include the Copilot for the web. Now, the Copilot for Microsoft 365, the one that you have in each of your day-to-day application, that one has a cost. And hold on, this cost is not possible to spread across 12-month payment. It is an upfront payment on a 1-year commitment. So when you actually purchase these licenses, very important that you have done everything prior to prepare, because this has a Canadian cost of $488.40 per year
Per year.
per user. Exactly, Tyler. And one thing that I do recommend, don't roll it out to everyone to start. Choose a few users that will be part of a focus group and that will meet maybe once a week, twice a week for half an hour to discuss their wins, their challenges, evaluate how much time that tool actually helped them save, how much stress they've been able to reduce because they have access to that tool. On a personal note, I have to say that I've had so many challenges when I started to use this at first because the mindset is around Google prompting. Prompting an AI tool is not natural. We need to learn how to do it. We need to learn where the limits are, and we need to accept that this is a brand new assistant. They need training. Just like a human being, if you give them a bunch of files and tell them, go file this. What is your filing structure? Where should they put this? They need a little more guidance. Same thing as Microsoft 365 Copilot. So that focus group will help you set best practices, identify groups of users that can really benefit from that AI tool before you start rolling it out to everyone. Because you want to make sure to get good return on investment. That really needs to help your team and not cause them more challenges, if I can say.
Yeah, it's a good strategy, and that's what we've been doing at Pace. We've been scaling it up, started with a small group, and now expanding it out now that we know really relevant use cases and who will get the value from it.
Absolutely.
So here's a good one too. So is there an open resource to assist with learning the basics, relevant prompts? So I guess some sort of training around Copilot and how to get started or use it once you have it.
Yes, there is. So there's the Microsoft Copilot Lab that will help you prompt. On this deck, I think the last slide gives you 10 things you should first try with Microsoft 365 Copilot once you get it. But that Copilot Lab, we can share the link as well, will really help you with your prompting. And if you're using Copilot for the web at first, this is where you can test, and there's no risk because it's not leveraging your own data, and it's commercial data protected if you actually paste or use your data specific to your law firm.
I mentioned the 12:55 emergency alert was going to come, right? Sure, everybody just got the warning on their phone. Okay, so another question related to how law firms protect against the improper information sharing of client information within a tenant. So I guess going back to what we had earlier in the presentation about that internal security strategy and perhaps some of the tools that Microsoft provides also to help analyze and segregate out data.
Absolutely. So even though you already have cybersecurity measures in place, all of that needs to be reviewed if you're thinking about including AI tools for your team. The first thing to do is to classify your data, clean it up, structure it, and classify it. Those data loss prevention policies will be very important. Classifying the data, so certain data sets can only be accessed by certain users. And the licensing, the Microsoft licensing also has to be considered. So for some users that don't need to have access to very, very sensitive data, maybe we're good with a lower bundle. But for CFOs, CTOs, CEOs, maybe it's important to have a bundle that includes more security features because they have access to very, very sensitive data. So once that data classification is done, then it's important to go into and I don't want to get too technical, but with your IT team, go into the Entra ID and create security groups. Those security groups will have conditional access rules to some data sets or all data sets. So that granularity is really yours to control. It is your data, and therefore your responsibility to make sure it is set the right way. So you will need to be involved at all steps with PACE or your IT teams.
Yeah, I think that's the key, and it's sort of almost going back a little bit to setting up file shares on your network, but this is just much broader than that. Who has access to a partners folder, and we're creating security groups, and partners have access to a partners folder, and accounting as a group, and they have access to an accounting folder and group. So this is just broader, where we're really having to work on classifying the data throughout all of your different 365 environments, and not just specific to certain file shares.
Absolutely.
And the firm needs to be largely involved, because ultimately those are the stakeholders that understand who should have access to what data.
Very important. You can't just offload this to
No.
PACE Technical or any other IT department. Everyone needs to be involved.
Yeah, we can provide the technical expertise, but that guidance has to come from inside.
Absolutely.
All right, so we did skip over one of the slides that you referred to, but based on our time, they will be available as a handout. There's one that Tanya mentioned there about 10 things to try for Copilot. So we won't go over this now. Oh, now that I've gone to it, I just have to go through. So that will be available to you. And really from here, I think we just say, thank you. Tanya, thank you for your time.